we want to welcome you back to the bottom of the ninth. New to our show this week is a segment called The Breakdown. The Breakdown is when we visit area experts to give tips to improve your athletic performance. Today we're going to visit with Drs. Michael Ambroziak and Dr. Jill Schenk at the Family Foot and Ankle Center, as they're going to demonstrate preventative injuries around your ankle. We're going to go inside the room right now to visit with the doctors and to show you some exercises on how you can take care of your ankle before you find yourself injured.
Hi, I'm Dr. Michael Ambroziak, Family Foot and Ankle Centers here in Bay City. I've been asked to go over some ankle exercises and some pre and post injury things that athletes can do to A, prevent ankle injuries, and B, rehab more quickly after ankle injuries. For my demonstration, I have Zachary Ambroziak, my son, somewhat of an athlete as well. And before we get started, I just want to go over some basic anatomy. In the leg below the knee, we have several muscles, the strongest of which is the calf muscle, which most people can visualize in bodybuilders. These are the two muscles that you see usually when someone will flex their calf. The calf muscle is the strongest muscle in the body, and your Achilles tendon, which originates in that muscle and attaches to the back of the heel, is the strongest tendon in the body. Because of this, they put a tremendous amount of downward force on the ankle joint, which tends to cause people to want to walk on their tiptoes. If you watch dogs and cats and horses and other animals that walk on four legs, stand and walk, you will see that they actually do walk on their tiptoes. As bipeds, or people that animals that walk on two legs, we tend to want to put our heel on the ground. In order to do this, we need a little bit more of a loose calf muscle. In addition to the calf muscle, which is actually made up of three separate muscles, there are 8 other muscles below the knee that originate in the leg, cross the ankle joint into the foot, and provide support and stability of the foot and the ankle. Several of them will cause your toes to bend up and down, but they also secondarily provide support and stability to the ankle. The problem arises when a person has too tight of a calf muscle, and the tendency is for them to walk a little bit more on their toes or put pressure on their toes, and the result of that is for the foot to collapse. These other muscles try to compensate and usually get overworked. And what will happen is oftentimes a runner will get shin splints because they overuse the muscles in the front of the leg to try and pull that foot up. And a shin splint is nothing more than painful muscles or tendons anywhere from the shin where the muscle originates all the way down to the top of the foot, even to the toes, depending on where that irritation arises from that compensation. The solution? Stretching your calf muscles. Now, as far as ankle injuries are concerned, most people think of ankle injuries along the lines of a sprained ankle. A sprained ankle will arise usually when you land on your foot in an inverted position, or where your big toe is off of the ground and your pinky toe is closer to the ground. The ankle will then twist further. Usually, for example, in a basketball injury, you land on somebody's foot, on your heel, the foot is plantar flexed slightly, and you then twist the ankle. The ligaments on the side of the ankle will be stretched out. Usually patients will relate a popping feeling. They'll have pain, swelling, and bruising over the outside of the ankle, and they'll go to the emergency room. Generally, x-rays will be negative, and unfortunately most emergency room doctors, and nothing personal here, will say it's just a sprain, go home and you'll be fine. The problem then arises is that these ligaments have been stretched out, and the x-rays will not show that. As long as nothing's broken, everything is assumed to be okay. Without the proper rehabilitation of that simple sprain, you can have chronic problems and instability, leading you to twist your ankles more frequently. And this can become quite debilitating. And I will get into the exercises for the rehabilitation, which simply enough are the same exercises that we use to prevent sprains from occurring. But to start with, whether you have had problems with your ankles or feet in the past, or you have had no problems whatsoever, most people, if not all people, would benefit greatly from stretching their calf muscles. And simply put, to stretch your calf muscles, all you want to do is pull your toes up towards your knee. And you want to stretch the back portion of the leg. And you would feel that just below the knee, because 2/3 of your calf muscle originate above the knee and 1/3 below the knee. So you're going to feel a lot of the tension behind the knee. If you don't feel that resistance when you're stretching, then you're not doing it right. And just to demonstrate this, simply put, any motion that would cause your foot to dorsiflex or the toes to go towards the knee is going to stretch your calf muscle out. What you don't want to do is stand on your tiptoes and strengthen the calf muscle. That happens with every step that you take. It's natural, it's going to happen by itself. What is not natural is actually stretching. So, one of the best ways to stretch your calf muscles is to stand on an elevated surface. I'll use this stool as an example. And just hang your heel off the back of the stool, putting all your weight on one foot and holding that for about 30 seconds. Now, I have several friends that are physical therapists, friends that are physicians, and there's a lot of disagreement on how long someone should stretch. I'm a big believer in if you make it too difficult, people aren't going to do it at all. So my philosophy is if you can stretch for 30 seconds on your right leg and then switch to your left leg for 30 seconds, that's a minute if my math serves me correctly. If you do that twice on the right leg and twice on the left leg, that's 2 minutes. Spread that out into 5 sets a day. And the 5 times a day where everybody, I believe, does the same thing is where you wake up, you eat breakfast, you eat lunch, dinner, and go to bed. So if you stretch for 2 minutes, 5 times a day, you're going to get a good effective stretch of your calf muscles. Some therapists would recommend stretching for 1.5 minutes at a time. I find that most people don't have the attention span to do that. So 30 seconds is a doable time frame. Also, anytime you're standing in line at the grocery store, you can stretch on the back of a shopping cart. I stretch my calves every time I put gas in my vehicle, and I'll just stand on the edge of the cement slab that the gas pump rests on. These are easy times to get an extra set of stretching in. You should always be thinking about stretching, just like you should always be thinking about brushing your teeth and stuff like that, most of which we don't do either. Now, stretching your calves will restore some amount of balance between the back of your ankle and the front and sides of your ankle. That being said, we still have to strengthen those 8 other muscles in the leg that provide support and balance to that tight calf muscle. So, how do we accomplish that? Like I said, when you go to the gym, you can do squats, you can do hamstring exercises, you can do leg extensions and calf raises. There are no machines designed to strengthen these 8 other muscles in the ankle. These are muscles that we use with every step we take. Now, for example, to get into rehab exercises, we'll go back to a sprained ankle. There are 2 muscles on the side of the leg called the peroneus longus and peroneus brevis, which is academic. But they come behind the outside or fibular malleolus and attach one to the side of your foot. The other one goes all the way into the foot and attaches underneath the arch. Those 2 muscles pull the ankle in this direction, which is the exact opposite of the most common type of sprain, which is the inversion sprain. Now, one of the ligaments in the ankle, the anterior talofibular ligament, has a small reflex nerve ending in it. When that ligament gets stretched, much like a knee-jerk reaction when we check your reflexes in the knee, that nerve ending will send an impulse to your spinal cord, shortcut to these muscles, and want to pull your ankle in that direction. When you sprain this ligament or stretch this ligament, you damage that nerve ending and you will lose that reflex. Therefore, next time you twist your ankle and that ligament gets stretched, there's no reflex to fire these muscles and pull your ankle into eversion, or the opposite of a sprain. So strengthening these 2 muscles before you have a sprain will make it harder for you to sprain your ankle. Of course, accidents still can happen. 3 of the muscles in the front of your leg pull your ankle up, and there are 3 muscles deep in the back of your leg that pull your foot down and help give your arch some support. Now, because there are no machines designed to specifically strengthen these muscles, we have to rely upon other things. One of the common devices that we use is quite simply a gigantic rubber band called a TheraBand. Anyone that's been to physical therapy has probably seen these, and it's just a big stretchy piece of material. They come in different tensions. Some are very hard to stretch and some are very easy to stretch. In any event, if you don't have access to one of these, you can usually pick one up at a medical supply place. Sometimes a physical therapy office will sell them, or sometimes even give them away. But the poor man's TheraBand is nothing more than a bungee cord. So if you're going to use a bungee cord, you might want to have a pair of shoes on if you're going to do these exercises. And some of the basic exercises that we do, if you don't have an assistant to hold this for you, you just tie a knot in the end and hook it around your bedpost or a table or a couch or something that's not going to move. But one of the easiest ones is to hold the TheraBand over the top of the foot and go ahead and pull your ankle up for me against that. And just provide tension. Keep your knee straight, and simply pull your ankle up against that. Again, if you hold this for, say, 10 seconds, you're going to get some contraction and you'll feel some discomfort in the front of your leg. That means you're doing it right, just like any exercise. No pain, no gain. There's no real pain involved, but you should feel like you're doing something. You hold that for 10 seconds and then relax, and then do that about 10 times. Just remember the number 10. 10 seconds, 10 times, and not 10 times a day, but a couple times a day will help. The more the better. The other muscles that you want to strengthen are the muscles deep behind the ankle, and the best way to do that is to pull your foot back down this way, almost in the direction of a sprain, but you're not strengthening the calf, you're strengthening the muscles that support the arch in the foot intrinsically. Again, 10 seconds, 10 times. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, are these peroneal muscles on the side of the ankle that actually help prevent sprains from occurring. Again, with the knee straight and the ankle stable, you want to pull your foot up and outward, just like this, again, holding it for 10 seconds. Now, like I said, if you don't have someone to hold this for you, just tie it around a couch or an immovable object and pull against that resistance. The harder you pull, the more contraction you get. It's almost like adding 5 pounds to a machine. So again, 10 seconds in that direction, 10 times. You do that once or twice a day, and you'll feel some fatigue in the muscles, but eventually as you build those muscle fibers up in size and number, those muscles will get stronger and make it more difficult for you to twist your ankle again. That being said, once you do sprain your ankle, you go to the emergency room, x-rays are negative, everything's fine, on your way. Just a quick note on my ankle sprain acute treatment, I always remember the acronym RICE. Rest, ice, compression, elevation. Rest it, stay off of it, don't walk on it, don't use it for 1 week. Give these ligaments a chance to gel, to form a little bit of a blood clot, and try to heal a little bit. Ice. Apply ice right on the area or just above the area for about 30 minutes to an hour at a time, a couple times a day for the first 3 to 5 days. After that 3 to 5 days, that acute inflammatory phase will calm down a little bit. You'll still have some pain, but the swelling will start to subside. Compression, wrap it with an ace bandage. If you're playing basketball and you have high tops on, don't take your shoe off and take a look at it. Keep your shoe on, tie it tight, wrap an ace bandage over top of that, and elevation, obviously prop it up in the air. Blood flows downhill just like water, everywhere but the mystery spot. So the higher you prop your foot and leg, the less it's going to swell. Swelling will slow the healing process. Give that a week to calm down. Then you want to start these exercises to rehab that ligament, restore that reflex that you've lost in that ligament, and strengthen those muscles that will prevent this from happening again. So, what if you don't have TheraBand? There are some other exercises that I use on a regular basis, usually for the sprain after it occurs, but before it occurs, this can help strengthen as well. And it's quite simple. One, all you have to do is pull your foot in the direction that you would use a TheraBand and hold it for several seconds, contracting it as hard as you can. But what's even easier is what I call my ABCs. Just write the alphabet with your ankle. A, B, C. Now for time constraints, I'm not going to go through the entire alphabet. But you can do printed or cursive, you can do capital or small, you can do the Greek alphabet if you know it. 26 letters, takes about a half a minute, do both feet at the same time. What you're doing is you're randomly firing these muscles in different directions so they don't develop a routine and you get this kind of a muscle memory thing that goes on and you start to lose growth. So you're randomly firing these muscles in all different directions using all the muscles that we're trying to strengthen. On top of all this, you want to stretch your calves again. If there's one thing I could leave you with, the bottom line is stretch your calf muscles. All else being equal, stretching your calves will help prevent a lot of injuries, a lot of problems with the feet down the road, and it's something that I tell almost every single one of my patients that come into my office. So, that's all I have to say right now about ankle injuries and rehab. The prevention is the same as the recovery. The more prevention you do, the less recovery you will have to do. Thank you.
And we are back here with Dr. Michael Ambroziak, who just got done giving you tips on how to prevent your ankle injury and then how to rehab your ankle injury. And just to reiterate the point, as a former coach and someone who deals a lot with athletes, you know, the ankle's a mainly forgotten part until you sprain it.
Right.
You know, in your experiences, Just tell me a little bit about the different grades of sprains that kids can come up with when they twist their ankle.
Well, there are a couple different ways to grade an ankle sprain. Generally, we go through grades 1, 2, and 3. Grade 1 might be a slight stretching or tearing of one of the ligaments in the front of the ankle. A grade 2 will involve more ligaments and more severe damage, and a grade 3 is just more of a total rupture of 2 or 3 of the ligaments. Obviously, the higher the grade, the higher the severity. But most ankle sprains will recover if treated properly acutely. And like I tried to explain in the demonstration, when you sprain your ankle, you might feel a pop. That's usually your ligament stretching a little bit, similar to bending over and feeling a little bit of a rip in the seat of your pants. You look in the bathroom, you can't find a rip because it only shows up when you have your pants on and you bend over. Just like a sprained ankle, it won't show up on an x-ray. So a lot of times it's not treated aggressively enough. And by aggressively, I actually mean conservatively with rest, ice, compression, and elevation. Give it a week to calm down, to gel a little bit, and then you want to start your rehabilitation exercises to build that strength and restore that protective reflex mechanism. When you sprain an ankle, because everything is so subcutaneous or directly under the skin, the ligament will tear or stretch, it'll bleed quite a bit, and you'll see that bleeding, swelling, and bruising under the skin. And it's usually pretty painful because of all the nerve endings that are in the ligaments. Now, ironically, when you fracture your ankle, again, you'll feel or hear a pop. The x-rays will show a fracture, but before you get those x-rays, it may not be that swollen, it may not be that painful, because all the swelling occurs inside the bone and joint, and there aren't very many nerve endings inside the bone, so it's not as painful as a sprain. So usually you see the bruising and you feel the pain, you think, holy cow, this is terrible, and then it's not fractured, so you just take it easy.
One of the myths that I've heard from parents of kids who turn their ankle, sprain their ankle, is a sprain is worse than a break. A sprain is worse than a fracture. And for the life of me, I could never understand the myth of why they think that, or why they thought that. Is that something that everyone's ever come to you and said, you know, is it better to break my ankle versus sprain?
You know, the phrase doesn't really refer to the complexity of the injury or the complexity or simplicity of the repair. A sprain is worse than a break because a sprain is often ignored. And I think that's where this comes from. The sprain is worse because you go in, you get an x-ray, and it's not treated properly. You're sent home with an ace bandage if you're lucky, and it never quite gets better, or it takes 6 months to get better. With a break, you get an x-ray, it's broken, you're either in a cast for 6 months, or you have it fixed and you're in a cast for, 6 weeks, or you have it fixed and you're in a cast for 6 weeks. It's taken more seriously, you have more sympathy, it's treated more aggressively. So sprains are worse because they're actually neglected.
When you have the preventative, and you go ahead and you do the exercise that you demonstrated, and the athletes end up twisting or tweaking an ankle, what kind of recovery time, as long as that ankle is being strengthened in the pre-injury stage, typically the time frame in the post part of it, is it a couple of weeks difference?
Well, the healthy athlete that has been doing some preventative exercises is going to heal faster generally than someone, let's say, that gets off the couch and sprains their ankle going to the refrigerator. That being said, there is no guideline that fits every picture. But I will say that with the preventative exercises, which are identical to the recovery exercises, if you give that ankle that 5 to 7 day rest period to let that calm down, and then start your exercises with just walking, maybe with a soft ankle brace to give you some support and protection, a little bit of confidence so that you don't re-injure it acutely, and then maybe in 2 weeks you can start some running, some straight forward-backward exercises. When you start getting into the lateral side-to-side motion, the twisting motions, that's going to put a little bit more of that torque inversion onto that ankle and stretch that ligament out again. You want to wait a little bit longer for that. But my thought is, if you treat it aggressively with rest for a week, then start your exercises, you should be back faster than if you go right back and have it become a chronically painful, swollen, unstable ankle that now takes 6 months to feel better and be stronger again.
You mentioned ankle braces. Another thing, as a coach, we've got a lot of different feedback from different folks, different trainers with different thoughts. What is the strength of using a brace versus not using a brace? Does it make your ankle weaker by using a brace? Is that just a mental part of the rehabilitation process that the athlete himself was going to have to overcome?
That's a very good question. I run into this all the time, not only with athletes, but also with, let's say, an older patient that's got some arthritis and weakness in their ankles. Once you start depending upon a brace to protect and hold your ankle up, you become more dependent upon that brace. If you can perform the exercises on a daily basis, strengthen those muscles that provide intrinsic support and strength to your ankle, you don't need a brace anymore. But they're important for that first week or two during your, let's say, basketball or baseball or any sport. When you're competing in practice and even in a game, it wouldn't be a bad idea to wear a brace just as a precaution. A lot of people wear these air casts, the green and white plastic stirrups up and down the inside and outside of the ankle. They're very protective. Nobody likes them because they're cumbersome and somewhat ugly and even obvious, but there are so many more braces out there that are just as protective. But my feeling and philosophy is if you have something a little bit softer, a neoprene brace with a couple elastic figure-8 wraps around the ankle that gives you that freedom of motion, and it restores that neuromuscular feedback, that proprioceptive feedback that your body senses your ankle's position in space and on the floor, you're going to restore that reflex mechanism, maintain your natural muscle strength and function, and actually have a stronger ankle potentially than you had before the injury. The more rigid the brace, the more protective the brace, the more reliant upon the brace your muscles become, the weaker the muscles become, and then the longer it takes to get off of that brace. So a soft brace is better than a rigid brace unless you have a major injury. And again, like I said, around the house, in school and stuff like that, you don't need a brace just to walk up and down stairs and up and down a hallway. But if you're going to start competing again, a softer brace is going to give you that mild support with the feedback and maintaining your natural muscle strength.
Well, I'd like to thank Dr. Michael Ambroziak, and hopefully this segment will allow you, the athlete, or you, the parent, a little more of an educational aspect of your ankle and how you can prevent your ankle injury and also get back on the field even quicker. We'll be back after this brief moment from our word from our sponsor. You're watching the bottom of the ninth here on the Great Lakes Hardball Network. And we want to welcome you back to the bottom of the ninth. In closing, we want to remind everybody that January 11, 2014 will be our Hot Stove Banquet. The Hot Stove Banquet is Great Lakes Hardball's biggest fundraiser of the year. It allows us to raise funds to allow us to webcast games, to provide shows of this, like this. And one of the ways that we're going to raise money this year is through the auction. We recently received some items from David Wright, Jonathan Papelbon, and Jorge Posada. We just wanted to show everybody what exactly we have received. These are a pair of Nike shoes that David Wright endorses with his signature on the left foot. We have a couple of baseballs. One is signed by World Series champion Dustin Pedroia, as well as an autographed baseball by David Wright from the New York Mets. A Philadelphia Phillies authentic uniform, and you can see the tag on the bottom, the authentic tag from Majestic, and the autograph on the back of the jersey in the number 5. We've got the New York Yankees pinstripe jersey, autographed by Jorge Posada, catcher of the World Series champion New York Yankees a couple of years ago. He spent many of his good years with the New York Yankees. And last but not least, another authentic jersey from the New York Mets, David Wright. And this one is autographed inside the number 5 as well. We want to thank Keith Miller and his associates over at ACES Agency for the support in this year's Hot Stove Banquet. For information on the Hot Stove Banquet, make sure, or for ticket information, make sure you email greatlakeshardball@hotmail.com or check our new website coming December 1st at www.greatlakeshardball.com for all the information.